Hi, everyone. I wanted to start with a little bit of a history lesson. And so I want to go back about 100 years, a little over 100 years back. And there was this industry called ice harvesting. Pretty big on the east coast of the US, and it's also big in Norway, actually. So for those of you in Norway, maybe someone of your ancestors work on this. And what it was about is to go to these giant lakes that are frozen, cut out of ice and pull it out and actually use it for cooling all kinds of things down. And so it was a big, pretty well-going industry, and then this happened. The refrigerator showed up. And so obviously, when you have an electrical refrigerator, you don't need ice anymore, so it changes the whole dynamic. And this is the typical story of disruption happening to incumbents where new technology comes along and so on, and it changes everything. I'm not going to talk about that. What I want to talk about is more fundamental on a technological level, what happened back then. So if you think back to that time, electricity had been invented a while back before, and everyone was using electricity. So the ice harvester, they were using a light bulb. So to them, electricity meant light bulbs. Or if they were thinking about what is that thing called electricity, it might have meant something much bigger, like the Tesla coil or so on. So she had this like extreme pictures in your mind. Either it's like this simple light bulb, or it is this crazy scientist with the lightnings kind of all around. And this happens all the time when you go through a transition of a technology, a new technology that's fundamentally changing how things work. And so for a little bit of context about myself, I've been in the Valley for over 15 years. I worked at Google, and then I went to Siri, which got acquired by Apple, left there to start my own company, which got bought by Google. So I've been in this technology transition for quite a while, and including the mobile transition. The same thing happened. People couldn't quite imagine what would the mobile device be able to do until it actually happened. And so the most recent transition that's happening right now is what's called artificial intelligence. And so my most recent job was with the Google Assistant, leading product there. And it's sort of in the epicenter of artificial intelligence, being able to talk to machines and so on and so forth. But again, we have this weird picture of what artificial intelligence might be. And so either you have this friendly picture of there's some cool technology out there, an assistant or self-driving car or whatever, or you get this really doomsday picture. You got Terminator showing up, it's going to kill us all, or you got Elon Musk going on stage and he's like sweating, going like, you guys aren't listening, this is going to kill us all. And to be honest, like neither picture is really helping us. And so I wanted, before I get into the application of AI, and I'm a product person, so I like to talk much more about the application than anything else. I think it's good to try to build a model of what is this technology about and how can we apply it. And so let's start with a completely blank slate. And let's put the time axis down there. So this is time going from one direction to another. And in the middle we have today. And on the y-axis I want to put complexity. And so what I mean by complexity, I don't want to think about the size of the data or anything like that, but the actual complexity as perceived by a human being or by a machine. And so you get along that axis, you go from pure binary data, simple computer readable, to financial data and things that are highly structured, and then it becomes more and more unstructured. You get photos and audio files and things like that. So that's the dimensions that I want to use to kind of try to tease apart what can this technology do and how can it help us. And so if you think about today's technology, what I call traditional software, it kind of covers this area. The further back you go in time, you got more time to process, you can diagnose and understand some of the data, and you get some very simplistic predictions going on into the future, but they're not quite that sophisticated. And this curve is what we technologists are constantly trying to push. So we try to push it up because we want to be able to do more into predicting the future, and we want to understand more complicated data. Now, colloquially in a conversation, what we call in daily conversations, that whole area of the unknown charted territory, we just call AI. And if you see this picture, you kind of go like, that's not helpful. And so what can we do to really try to understand this whole new territory, this uncharted land of AI? So I want to just dig a little bit deeper into that. And really what AI looks like is this. And again, it doesn't help much. but basically it means we're getting better and better at something. And I want to call attention to the red bar, which is the human bar. So in some sense, some kind of deep technology or AI is already better at understanding some things than us humans. Now, it doesn't mean that humans have replaced us in any way in a sense, but it does mean in some dimensions we're getting really good at some of this technology. But again, this picture, it doesn't give a full idea of what's going on. It just gives you a glimpse of one piece of technology working on one data set, so it's really not helpful to paint the whole thing. So let's get back to this one. Now, if I want to be able to kind of move in this chart, I can go up the axis, and that's what's called pattern recognition. And so as you move up the complexity level, the technology is getting better and better understanding patterns. And what this means in practice is finally we have technology that can understand human parsable data. You've got photos, videos, audio, things that sort of historically the traditional software has not been able to understand. And that gives a tremendous power in terms of taking pictures of people or things and so on, and being able to apply it into a sort of real-life business scenario. If you move forward, you get what's called predictions. And it's a different kind of technology, usually like an LSTM or an RNN, where you can now take pretty complicated multidimensional data and you can understand and try to predict what's happening if you look forward into the future. And obviously, if you move up to the right, you sort of combine the two. Now you're thinking about, can you predict traffic patterns in a city based on surveillance cameras that look at intersections and so on and so forth. So it's getting really sophisticated and complicated. Now, so having this picture in mind, we shouldn't be talking about AI, or we should use it cautiously, and instead think about these two fundamental ways that the technology is enabling us, namely being able to do better pattern recognition and better predictions. And if you think about it, it's kind of the core assets of what a human brain can do. What we're really good at, we can understand patterns, like we can understand what's happening around here based on patterns, and then we can use those patterns to do predictions and try to understand what's going to happen next and so on. So anticipation of the future events. So that's the technology as a very simplistic basic model. There's more to this, but there's only 20 minutes, so I'm not going to dig deeper into it. But I wanted to take this then and say, okay, how can this be applied to a real life scenario? And in order to do it here, I actually took a very simplistic example. I'm a part owner in a coffee house that's close to my home in Iceland, and this is a picture of the coffee house. So in order to kind of take it away from all really real life scenarios, I just want to talk about what could possibly be done in the context of a coffee shop trying to make their business better. And so today, this is the coffee shop you get in, and what technology helps the coffee house with, and by the way, they have a cutting-edge NCR system to run the business on, and what they can do is they can look at transactional data. So you know how many beers you sold, you know how much has been sold of soups and coffee and so on. And any kind of sort of business decisions are much more made on a hunch. So the staff might say, oh, it's summertime, we're probably going to sell more beer. Or it's nice outside, I think this is going to happen. But that's all human intuition. There's no actual sort of data-driven work being done because we're using traditional software. So we don't have a lot of insight into the future, and we don't have a lot of insight into complexity of what's happening. The same thing would happen outside. Imagine this is a family, they're walking by. What could possibly be done to help service them better? Today, we might have their location, but that's not going to be helpful. I mean, it's a local coffee shop. People walk by all the time. It'd be pretty annoying if they notified us every time, oh, there's a coffee shop here. I know. So you need more than that. So let's take that example and think about, okay, with all these abilities that I just talked about, what could be done to help with try to sort of improve the business or make the service better? And so you got the location. Let's start outside. You got the location. This is a family walking by. And maybe you understood better the patterns of people. So maybe they just came from the swimming pool nearby, and they're walking this particular way. And you can make some reasonable assumptions about what does it take, where this family is heading, and what they're doing. And you can even factor in other things like the date, the weather, it's cloudy, it's summertime, and oh, by the way, there's a waffle offer, and for families that come from the swimming pool or walking this direction at this time of the day, they're likely to want a waffle. And you go, well, there's a high probability maybe then that you should let them know about it, and they might take a turn and stop inside, which they wouldn't have done otherwise. So again, being able to make some reasonable assumption about what's happening based on these behavioral things is what the technology enables us to do. And by the way, this isn't being done in any scale in any company that I know of, which is interesting. It sounds kind of crazy. Let's go back inside. Again, what could we do to make the service better here? We had these axis of dimensions, technology. Start by scaring you all off. We could do face recognition. We could know exactly who's in the coffee shop. But even backing away from that, because a lot of people feel that that's maybe too big of a step, just knowing how many people are in the coffee shop and where they sit is tremendously valuable. For a business like this, to know exactly the seat utilization at any given point in time and being able to use that data to better handle their business and offer better services is very, very valuable. So you don't have to go all the way because it might be other implications of that. I'm not going to talk about privacy, by the way, so let's put that aside. But that in it by itself is really, really valuable, and this technology enables us to understand this, which hasn't been possible before. You could even go and think about, okay, maybe you can see through the vision that this guy is low in coffee. So the service can say, hey, why don't you go and offer this guy more coffee? So there's more sales suddenly and better service at the same time without having to go into any sort of creepy personalization things that are too much. Similarly, you could say, okay, well, these two are having these kinds of drinks. Usually when the people show up and have this kind of drink, lava cheese is really good with it, so why don't you go offer them too? Again, trying to look at these patterns that are happening and understanding them on a multidimensional level to offer much stronger and deeper predictions about what is relevant and what's valuable. And it's not just about increased revenue or better service. If you have all this information, you know when people show up, you can predict pretty reasonably how likely they are to be there at when and so on. You could look at staffing schedules. And I don't know how many of you run a restaurant or a coffee house. I'm fairly new to this. I'm a techie. I was shocked that if you do the wrong staffing, you lose money. And so being able to take the data and help with the staffing and understanding that here's going to be big demand because you need more staffing. There's going to be not so much demand, you need to lower the staffing. That can actually mean the difference between profit and loss. And so just being able to help with that. And again, this is done today on human instinct and basically people's thinking and saying, look, the weather forecast looks like this, and I think it's going to be like that, and that's why I should probably get more people in to show up for that. And then, I don't know if you noticed, but this is a reflection of me taking the photo of the place in back there. And so it would actually kind of nice if I showed up there and it would notify me and it would be like, hey, you just showed up, you're here all the time, do you want the usual? Again, trying to tap into that sort of behavioral pattern and really understanding that as people show up, what do they want and how do you want to service them? So again, it's a very trivial example, I understand that. But I wanted just to apply these tools or this sort of map to what you could do to improve business using the actual elements of artificial intelligence, as opposed to saying, look, we're going to do AI and be all kind of vague about it. And again, it's not just about coffee shops or small business. Naturally, this can apply to any kind of business. So think about the airline industry. You've probably all taken plane in here or taken a plane sometime recently. The experience is often mixed. There's all kinds of opportunities to be better anticipated of customer service needs. Even the route planning today is done largely based on human instinct and human intuition. So being able to use the data that's being acquired to better sort of do route planning and predicting customers' needs would be tremendously useful. Banking, another one. It's all about the spread, and so if you could do much better financial instruments and you could be much more anticipative of customer needs and offer products that are much more related to what they want, you as a bank would be in a much better competitive position against other ones because you would be using these technologies to really apply and understand what's going to be happening in the near future. Manufacturing, obviously, I mean, that's probably one space that a lot of this is happening, but it's not just about having machines do work that we do manually before, but also having machines being more optimized. And it's interesting, if you, I don't know if you've seen all the videos from the Amazon warehouses and some of the startups in the space, it's being applied there. And there's this one cool technology where they use a camera to do the packing of all the boxes, and it was pretty cool. So there's some steps being taken there, but there's tremendous amount of opportunity to optimize a very complicated environment based on the ability to understand and see the complexities of it, and also be able to anticipate what needs to be done next, when and how. And then shipping, logistics. I just moved back from the US this past spring, and I had to get a container. And I was working with a reputable company, big one, and I was shocked that, I'm actually shocked that any container shows up at its destination, because the day off I was supposed to get the container, the company calls me, and this is in Oakland, or the port was in Oakland, so it's a big one. And they said, I'm sorry, there's no container available. And I had been 6 weeks preparing the whole thing. And I said, well, what do you mean? I thought we had one reserved. And they're like, yeah, it happens every now and then. Tough shit. So I think, like, again, a lot of opportunities to get a better handle of what's going on, being able to plan the routes better, and being much more anticipatory. What are the needs? And using the data to really optimize the business in some sense. And finally, this is one of my favorite sort of use cases. It's grocery retail. Amazon Go has obviously started working on this, but I think there's tons of opportunities all the way back from logistics, being able to be much more predictive about the demand on the outside, so that you can do much more just-in-time inventory management and so on, but also in the store. And it's interesting, the current trend is to do the self-checkout lanes. That's basically handing the work of the employees to the customer, which I think is the worst user experience. So hopefully we'll start moving to more of that I can just pick things out of the aisle, and they will be automatically detected, and I can just walk out and it automatically gets paid. So again, using this technology, now you can do real life things that before were not possible. So I think this technology, I mean, there's tons of opportunities. It's going to impact probably every industry. I think most people don't realize quite what the impact is going to be. And I think it's also going to allow us to take units of scale much smaller. So you bring it down. This is a small, it's like an espresso scooter that's out my house in California every now and then. Love the guy. This guy should be able to optimize his business just like anyone else at a larger scale. So real quick, what I'm doing right now, I left Google in last spring, went home, took the summer off, and now I'm working with, I'm on the investment board of Crowberry Capital. I'm the chairman of Icelandic Startups. I'm on the board of the Science Park. So through those, I'm actually looking at all this and trying to look for like what's the next opportunity. So if you want to get in touch about it, talk about it, feel free to. I'd love to talk to you. Thank you.